Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we'll talk about Stack Overflows, index out of bounds, and out of memory issues in Rust. All right, so let's start with index out of bounds issue. It's pretty simple. If we try to access an element inside of vector or array via index, which is larger than array length -1 or vector length -1, we're going to get panic in Rust. That's because vectors and array indexes start with 0, so the largest one is always going to be array length -1 or vector length -1. To ensure that we handle those errors gracefully, we should use .get, and .get returns an option type with none if we get index out of bounds issue. Let's move on to Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow occurs when we exhaust memory on the call stack, which is available to us. And usually it happens when we have chain of function calls, since after every function call, data is going to get pushed onto a stack. And if during this chain of calls, we are not popping anything from a stack is going to get filled pretty quickly and we'll get Stack Overflow error. Those errors are super serious. They'll definitely lead to crash of a program. So we have to be careful, especially with recursive functions, since those are main candidates, which can lead to Stack Overflow. In this simple example, we're using factorial calculation function. And since this function is recursive, if we input super large value in here, eventually it's going to lead to Stack Overflow and crash of a program. Let's move on to out of memory issues in Rust. In this scenario, if we exhaust available memory inside of system, we're going to get out of memory issue. It usually happens when unbound data types such as arrays, vectors are used, or we do not check length of a buffer. So we have to always be careful when we get data from the user to ensure that user cannot fill our vectors to cause out of memory issues eventually. We could either put some bounds onto vectors or charge a user some fee so that it won't be financially viable for a user to try to crash our program. In this example, we have an empty vector, and then we are pushing to that vector a string with letter A repeated use size max times. And obviously it's going to be more than we have memory available in our system. So we're going to get memory allocation failure, and we're going to get abort in our program, and it's definitely going to crash our program as with Stack Overflow. So we have to be extra careful with this one. All right, so let's go to a code and see those examples in action. All right, let us start with index out of bounds issues. In this example, we have vector from 1 to 9, and here we are trying to print the last element of vector. That's why we're inputting vector length -1. And in this example, we're trying to get an element under the index of 9. That's why we're inputting vector length without -1. And as expected, since vectors start with 0, here we're going to get index out of bounds panic, and here we're going to get 9 back. Let me run the code. And as expected, here we got 9, and here we got index out of bounds panic. What if instead of doing this, we used get method? Let me uncomment those lines. So here we decided to use vector.get and get index from, let's say, from the user. In this scenario, imagine the user inputted an index which does not exist. In this scenario, we're gonna match on an option type, and if we have some value inside, we're going to print it out, and if there is none, meaning that we got index out of bounds panic, we're going to print line. Print index out of bounds, please try again instead of panicking, which is a lot better. Let me rerun the code again. First, I need to save it. All right, as expected, we got 9 from here, and here we got index out of bounds, please try again instead of panic. Let me move to out of memory issues. In this scenario, we have vector of strings, and then we are trying to push a letter repeated use size max times. Obviously, we don't have such memory, and that's why we're going to get out of memory issue back, which is going to cause crash of our program. That's why we have to be extra careful about unbounded vectors and whether user can fill them up or input any value inside of vector. Let me run it. Yeah, and as expected, we got memory allocation bytes failed, and we got a port back. Let me move to Stack Overflow. In this example, we have factorial calculation, and since it's a recursive function, it might be exploited to cause Stack Overflow. And in this example, we can put a super large number, and it's gonna keep pushing stuff into a stack without popping anything, and eventually we're gonna get Stack Overflow. Let me run the code. And as expected, we got fatal runtime error, Stack Overflow. And we got abort back, meaning that the program crashed without any unwinding. All right, so that's all for this lecture, and I see you in the next one.